So with the Buffalo Bills coming very close to them defeating the Kansas City Chiefs and go, of course, it wasn't a close game if you guys watched it, but obviously they were one game away for going to the Super Bowl. Brandon Beane came out and said, like, hey, listen, Kansas City, that's the bar, right? If you want to reach the top, you got to get past Kansas City. And obviously, I do believe that Brandon Beane will kind of reevaluate, and pretty much his team, Sean McDermott, they will reevaluate. They'll not only reevaluate the players, but they'll try to reevaluate the staff. And obviously, we could see some pretty big, some things, some unexpected things that we, as Bills fans, we would have never ever expected Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott to do. But when you face a monster like Kansas City and you get destroyed the way you kind of did, especially when you were one game away before going to the Super Bowl, you got to reach that point. And you probably will do some uncharacteristic things to try to get to that point of not only reaching Kansas City, but surpassing them. So I want to talk about some things, some bold things I'm going to say that I think the Buffalo Bills and Brandon Beane could potentially do. Now, again, these things are not guaranteed to happen, but just some things that don't be surprised if these things actually do happen. So we're going to start off with this. So number one, the Buffalo Bills trade away Tremaine Edmonds. I would not be surprised at all if Buffalo trades away Tremaine Edmonds. Now, if Leslie Frazier goes away and they get a new defensive coordinator and maybe try to implement a new defense and of course implement a new defensive scheme, then especially if it fits Tremaine Edmonds and it makes him play better under that scheme, then of course you can take everything I kind of say away. You can kind of throw that in the trash. However, Tremaine Edmonds was a guy that his rookie year had his slumps, but overall he showed glimpses. Second year, he improved a lot as a linebacker. He even made the Pro Bowl. But we showed the flashes and glimpses. But the whole point of getting Tremaine Edmonds, especially at the value that we got him in 2018, was for him to be what Darius Leonard is now. Darius Leonard has been an all-pro linebacker since his rookie year. That's what Bills fans kind of expect Tremaine Edmonds to be. Now, we all expect a slow development. We all expected him to take some time because he was very, very raw coming out of Virginia Tech. I mean, hell, he was a 19-year-old in his junior season. However, this is now going to be Tremaine Edmonds' fourth year. This is going to be his final year of his contract unless Buffalo takes the fifth-year option. And even though Tremaine Edmonds still has a crap ton of upside, probably out of all the linebackers out of that 2018 class, has he been better than Roquan Smith? Has he been better than Darius Leonard ever since his rookie year? No, he just hasn't. Hasn't been that player. So he's been a solid player, but as we saw from the Kansas City Chiefs game, do they want solid guys or do they want Pro Bowl, all-pro type guys? Do they want those guys? You can make an argument that for this year, Tremaine Edmonds wasn't even in Pro Bowl level. He was a solid linebacker. He was a starting linebacker, but he didn't really do anything too flashy. There were games where he showed why the Buffalo Bills took him, and then there were other games where he looked like an undrafted player. Now, we had to question it. Is it injury related? Is he just not? Is it the scheme? What is it, right? Is it because the lack of mini camp and all that type of stuff, what you normally would have in the offseason? It's a lot of things that we kind of had to question this year. But going into his fourth year, you can definitely get some value. Now, can you get a first-round pick for Tremaine Edmonds? No, I think at this point, especially in the third year of his career, he's probably a second or maybe a third-round value. I mean, if this was after his rookie year, I think a team could potentially trade away that first-round pick only because the upside on Tremaine Edmonds is so high. It is all-pro Hall of Fame level if you can get it out of him. That's if you can get it out of him. And I think the question is that if Leslie Frazier turns down that Texan job and if he becomes the head coach, is he going to get the most out of Tremaine Edmonds? Is he going to help him reach that potential? Or do they need another linebacker to come in here and for them not only for them to have that fit, but for them to reach a level that even we couldn't even get out of Tremaine Edmonds? This is something to kind of think about. But Tremaine Edmonds is a guy that if Brandon Beane decides, you know what, we just don't believe this is his final year of his contract. We just haven't seen that much from Tremaine Edmonds in order for us to kind of get the most out of him. Maybe he goes to another team and get that, but we can definitely get some value of getting another player that could potentially become better than Tremaine Edmonds. I could see the Buffalo Bills and Brandon Beane potentially trading away Tremaine Edmonds during this offseason. I would not be surprised. Number two thing that I can expect the Buffalo Bills to do is that they could trade up in the NFL draft. And I'm not just talking about moving up a couple of spots. I'm talking about maybe getting to top 15, top 10 status. Maybe they'll trade away a couple of key players in order for them to get there. Now, the question is, who will they trade? I don't know. Again, Tremaine Edmonds is a guy that I can see on that block. Tre'Davious White's a guy that they're not going to trade away, but I wouldn't be shocked. It could be hell, but you know what? Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, those are guys that are going to be a little bit more older, and those are really good. Those are Pro Bowl caliber safeties, but have they really changed the? I'm not going to say they haven't changed because obviously those guys have been impact players for like the last 3 to 4 years. However, if you want to go ahead and get a player and get a Tyreek-like player like a Jalen Waddle, or if you want to try to go up and maybe Devontae Smith slides and maybe you see an opportunity to get him and you know what Devontae Smith can provide as a number 2, as Devontae Smith can provide. And I know some people may call me crazy. Why would we trade to get Devontae Smith? We already got a number 1 receiver like Stephon Diggs. Well, Brian Dable, this is an offense that doesn't cater to running backs, right? I'm not going to sit up here and say that we're going to draft a running back or that we're going to trade up to get a running back. However, this is an offense that caters towards the passing game. It caters towards the receivers. And again, it's a receiving friendly offense, a scheme. So why not get another guy to pair up with Stephon Diggs? Obviously you saw against Kansas City how they were very, very physical against our receivers. And again, John Brown's going to be 32 years of age. Cole Beasley's going to be 33 years of age. These are guys that are only getting older. Gabriel Davis is a guy that was hurt, but I think he's still developing more as a receiver. You could go ahead and get a Devontae Smith guy, get rid of John Brown, get Devontae Smith, or get one of those high-end top players, once we get more scouting and once we get more information or more evaluation of these players heading towards the draft, maybe a Terrence Marshall, maybe one of those guys that can come in there, pair up with Stephon Diggs, and takes this offense to a whole nother level. So I can see the Buffalo Bills saying, you know what, we could trade back and get additional capital, or we could trade up really, really high to get a player if that player is right there for us. Take that guy, whether if it's a receiver, whether if it's maybe an offensive lineman, who knows, maybe it's an offensive lineman, whether if it's an edge rusher that they truly do, absolutely do believe in, that they believe that if we can get him and put him in our scheme, this is going to be a day one guy that could potentially be a Pro Bowl type of player. Obviously the Buffalo Bills have a bunch of solid players, but really when we talk about those Pro Bowl, All-Pro type players, how many do you have them on your roster, right, compared to how much Kansas City does? Again, the goal is not to just get to the playoffs every single year. The goal is to get to the Super Bowl. And in order to get to the Super Bowl, you have to dethrone the monster, which is the Kansas City Chiefs. So I can see the Buffalo Bills doing that. The number 3 thing is that I can see the Buffalo Bills literally getting rid of all their signee players. And what I mean by that is in 2020, who did you get? You get A.J. Klein. You got Quinn Jefferson. You got Josh Norman's obviously going to be a free agent, but you got Mario Addison, and Vernon Butler and Quinn Jefferson. So you got those players. But if you get rid of all those players, not only do you save a lot of capital, but again, you just create more cap room and you're not really going to create a huge penalty. You're not going to really create a huge penalty for yourself by getting rid of those players. Another player that you could potentially, again, there's Lee Smith, a guy that really doesn't hurt if you leave. If you even release Jerry Hughes, it doesn't really hurt. Now, people are saying, are you crazy? They're not going to release Jerry Hughes. But why not? Let's be honest here. Jerry Hughes is a solid football player, but has he been that consistent pass rusher that gets to the quarterback? Has he been that elite pass rusher for the Buffalo Bills? Not really. I mean, he's been a solid pass rusher for the last 3 years, but he's not like kind of how he was in 2013 or even in 2014, right? He's not Mario Williams. He's not Aaron Schobel. The Buffalo Bills, and they've really been ignoring this issue. It's not really been a huge issue, but they've been ignoring it for years of getting an elite pass rusher. And you saw in that Chiefs game, they barely put any pressure as far as guys coming off the edge. They even missed guys from the interior defensive line, guys like that Jordan Phillips impact, a guy that can get to the quarterback from the interior perspective. So would it really hurt by releasing a rotational player like Quinn Jefferson? Would it be really hurt to get rid of a player like Mario Addison, who you paid a 3-year, $30 million contract, who you paid $10 million to this year for what, 6.5, 7 sacks. And it's not like he was very, very consistent as a pass rusher. It was like he made a play once a while. Would it really hurt if you release A.J. Klein? Now, A.J. Klein was the most impactful signing player this year. However, look at this from this perspective. A.J. Klein, as soon as Matt Milano got healthy, what happened? A.J. Klein was a rotational player. A.J. Klein was a backup. You're paying what, $25 million for a backup rotational player? I just don't know. And even though he's been really good as a extra defender, as a blitzer, as a pass rusher, A.J. Klein has not been good in pass coverage. He's not very, very fast. He's not that athletic. In today's game, you want more Roquan Smith. You want more Devin Bush. You want more Devin Bush, even Tremaine Edmonds type of caliber players that have the speed to not only can run sideline to sideline, but can cover the slot, that can cover pretty much anything in the middle. You want those Isaiah Simmons type of players. And I just don't know if A.J. Klein's ready for that. Again, Vernon Butler, another guy who you're paying $15 million. Quentin Jefferson, a guy that you're paying You're not paying Vernon Butler $15 million this year, but you're paying him a hefty amount of money for a guy that was pretty much a rotational player. Quentin Jefferson, you're paying him $8 million to be a rotational player. Did those guys have such a huge impact to your defense? You can make the argument for Jerry Hughes, and if people want to argue that he can stay, that's fine. But when it comes to talk about the rest of the players that I just mentioned, did they really have that much of an impact on your team? You got to think about that for a second. Do they really have that much impact on your team? And if Brandon Beane decides to get rid of those guys, including maybe getting rid of contracts like Lee Smith, is it really going to hurt the team to not only get rid of those guys, but to try to replace those guys with better players, especially now knowing what the bar is, now knowing who the team to beat in this conference is, and really knowing the weakness of your team? Is it now possible for you to potentially get those players to try to get those players, get guys like Matthew Judon, get players like maybe a Von Miller type of guy, maybe trading for players like Khalil Mack, where by getting rid of those players, you're creating way more cap, way more money for your team to kind of spend and for you to, again, save up more for the future. I mean, you never know. So, yeah, I know it's a little bit rough, especially because those guys were solid players for your team. However, the Buffalo Bills need to reach Kansas City's level. Not only reach that level, they need to surpass that level. And I just don't know at this moment that with those players on the roster and pretty much you keeping those players and they're going to be draining money from the organization, I don't know if those players are going to give that much more compared to what we've seen. Maybe A.J. Klein can be that guy, but again, we have him more as a rotational player, especially if you go out there and you resign Matt Milano. What's the point of even him being on the roster at this point? Just for him to be just an extra depth player that's kind of squeezing the cap out of your roster so far. But again, these are things that, again, I could see Brandon Beane potentially doing. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they do it. These are things that are probably most unlikely to happen. However, I wouldn't be surprised, and I think that if this stuff happens, you guys shouldn't be surprised that this stuff really happens. So, again, let me know some of the things that I said that you guys liked, that you guys didn't like, and we can definitely respond and hash that out in the comment section below. But anyway, guys, this is going to be Jan Sports, aka Jan716. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, if you guys want to comment, just give me some more feedback in the comment section. Definitely would appreciate it. Again, like, share, subscribe, especially if you like this content. And that is all I got for you right now. So anyway, again, Jan Sports, aka Jan716. I'm out. Have a good night.